Was Prince Harry in tears over the security row? Who's tearing their hair out over the Sussexes' upcoming visit to the UK? Why are the royal family quitting Buckingham Palace? Plus, why do they hold a secret meeting this week? And how has Catherine been hitting new heights? We have an extraordinary show for you today. Hello and welcome to Palace Confidential, the weekly royal show with the best experts and the most reliable information. On the panel today, we have the Daily Mail's royal editor, Rebecca English, the Daily Mail's senior editor-at-large, Richard Kay, and the newspaper's diary editor, Richard Eden. Welcome to you all. That's not all, though. We also have video reports from some other brilliant correspondents coming in later too. A quick reminder that if you like this sort of royal content, please do consider subscribing to the Palace Confidential YouTube channel. We've just hit 550,000 followers on the channel. Thank you so much for that. But we do know that lots of you watch regularly and aren't subscribed. So what are you waiting for? It's free and it means you get reminded whenever we put new episodes out. And we've got some great ones coming up for you in the coming weeks. Right, let's start things with some fantastically heartwarming royal news. Catherine is back at Wimbledon. Rebecca, what can you tell us?
She is, although she's not going to be in the royal box, is my understanding.
Wow.
So she's popping along, she's going to watch one of the matches from the outside court, but actually she's going along mostly to highlight some philanthropic initiatives, including young people and photography. So there'll be lots of great coverage, but we won't see the traditional royal box moment. I'm sure we'll see that later in the tournament.
I was going to say, she doesn't like to come just once.
She loves her tennis, so yeah.
Absolutely. And it's not, of course, the first time we've seen her out and about over the last few days. We saw her take on, away from the genteel Wimbledon and Henman Hill, she was taking on much bigger challenges, wasn't she?
She was. Suddenly on Sunday I got a message from Kensington Palace saying, just giving you a bit of advance notice that this is going to come out, because we know it's Sunday, it's family time, but we think you might want to write about this. Oh yes, please. So she undertook the Three Peaks Challenge, which is not for the faint-hearted. It's conquering the three highest mountains in England, Scotland and Wales within a 24-hour period. And I think what's so amazing is she planned and executed this within the 24 hours without anybody knowing. You know, we talk a lot about security issues. I'm sure we'll go on to talk about that later. And, you know, Ben was the royal family's profile, but she went out there, and yes, she was spotted along the way by walkers who were very excited to see them, and she stopped and spoke to them. But, you know, she relatively did it under the radar, so kudos to her. And I thought it was quite a refreshing tonic to a lot of what we've seen and read about, you know, the entire wider royal picture this last few days.
Richard Kay, we're used to seeing royals getting stuck in on engagements, you could say. Sometimes they're in competitive sporting matches. This really felt like a very personal mission, didn't it?
Very much so, and I think it's a remarkable achievement when we think where Catherine was not very long ago. I mean, and these are seriously hard climbs. Okay, they're not mountains in the sort of European sense, but they're pretty tough to do, and to do it all in 24 hours is really quite something. And yeah, we have seen her. We've seen her in particular playing hockey. I remember during the 2012 Olympic Games, and she's a very sporty young woman, and sport has always been very important to her and to William. But this was a very personal achievement, I think, and it tells us a lot about her own journey of the last 2 years, because we mustn't forget the principal reason for doing it was to raise funds for the Royal Marsden Hospital, where, of course, she received much of her cancer treatment.
An excellent cause. Richard Eden, Richard Kay mentioned it there, you know, she's come an awful long way. This really does feel like a major step from a person who'd cancelled her entire calendar, basically, in 2024.
When you think this is someone who's had major surgery, abdominal surgery, and been treated for cancer over a long period, and she's done this. I mean, I have to make a confession. I've only ever scaled one of these heights. I think it was Snowdon. I've never done all three.
I've done Snowdon too, yes.
Yeah, that's relatively easy.
Yeah.
But still all three in the space of 24 hours. There was an interesting comment she made, actually, on the way down, where she said, you know, she was delighted to have been able to do it. You know, it's not something she thought perhaps she would be able to. So it's a real reassuring, happy sign of her recovery.
I think, yeah, I was going to add to that. You know, I think the phrase she used was, "I'm just so grateful to be walking amongst these hills." And I actually felt like a little lump in my throat. I was thinking, you know, she's a woman who's looked cancer and all the negative connotations with that in the face, and has come out the other side. And I think, well, kudos on her. And obviously she part of the message she wanted to get across is the holistic journey she's been on, how important that holistic side of her treatment and recovery that's been, and that's one of the things she's raising money for, is a holistic centre at the Royal Marsden, of which she's joint patron with William.
And kind of links into the films that she's been making.
The nature films, talking about the importance of being outdoors, and you know, that the kind of I suppose the strength that it's given her as part of this very long journey. It's a journey she's still going on. She's quite open and says, you know, as a cancer survivor, it's something you never quite get over, and it's still a work in progress for her.
We will return to this topic a little later on in the programme, so stick around for that. But I want to go to a less strenuous outing now, but one with still potential importance. Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, he took a trip to watch some carriage racing. Rebecca, tell us more.
Yeah, he actually ventured, well, not quite off the Sandringham estate. He suddenly popped up at the Sandringham horse trials, where the Duchess of Edinburgh was competed in carriage driving, and the Duke of Edinburgh was there, and he was seen in his cart, sunglasses on, trying to keep a low profile, but he was spotted, stayed for a little bit and then went off. But it shows you he's going out and about a little bit, but clean not to be spotted.
Richard Kay, this isn't sort of Project Thor, as you talked about with Prince Harry before, but are we seeing or sensing Andrew's sort of role in the family in the future?
Well, I thought the key thing that was missing, of course, in this little outing was a picture of him with his brother or sister-in-law, and that did not happen, and I don't think will happen. So, no, I don't think this is a major Thor. It is, as Rebecca pointed out, an event that was on the Sandringham estate, where Andrew now lives in exile. So I don't think anyone has any objections to him trundling along to look at a family event. But no, I don't think it has any huge significance yet.
And Richard, I mean, Richard mentioned exile there. Somebody calling it house arrest for him and his new place. Well, is this a big change for him though, to be out?
Well, I mean, let's clarify. You know, Andrew was arrested, but he hasn't been charged yet, and this has been quite a long time. So this is his family, it's his brother and his sister-in-law showing sympathy and solidarity for him. And we have heard that from others, members of the family too. William and Catherine were said to be concerned about Andrew's mental health, and he is essentially under a form of house arrest. So it's going to be very interesting to see if he is eventually charged, or if we'll hear that there's no charges to come.
Watch this space, of course, here on Palace Confidential. Now to an event that we can only assume Andrew wasn't invited to now, and it's one that our Rebecca revealed, a summit of senior royals in Scotland. Rebecca, this got us all excited. Tell us more.
Naughty, Luke. I told you not to use the word summit. I must put this in context. So the royal family have been in Scotland this week for engagements, but I found out that a dinner was held on Tuesday night at the Palace of Holyrood House, which is the King's official residence, and at that dinner was definitely the King, the Queen, William. There were a few other people there. Anne had been there during the day. Edward had been there during the day. And I don't know what was discussed. It was long arranged, but I think it's quite fascinating. They were all there together, and to be a fly on the wall for that, you know, after dinner coffee, and to see what went, or to hear what went down. I don't know, and I don't think I'm going to be able to find out, unfortunately.
Richard, Kate, they aren't together all that much in this sort of slightly informal circumstance. They've got busy lives. And the timing of this coming just before Harry's visit to the UK, it certainly raises eyebrows, doesn't it?
Well, timing is everything, of course, especially in royal matters. And you're right, they're not together that often. But Edinburgh Week is a big date in the royal calendar. There are always a whole series of events. There's a garden party, for example, in Edinburgh too. And other members of the royal family were around, and they're there supporting the king. But surely, at this dinner, there can only have been one topic of conversation: the imminent arrival of Harry. And I can imagine that some of those people around that dining table are less than thrilled about his arrival. But we'll see.
I presume, Richard, they'll be kind of wanting to know what's going on.
Well, what will be really interesting is the developments over the next week or two. And, you know, if we discover that Prince William and Catherine and their children perhaps have met Harry and Meghan, and then we may conclude that, you know, they've been lent on. I mean, I was told before that, you know, William and Catherine didn't want anything to do with them, and they were leaving the king to meet his younger son if he wants to. But sort of the proof will be in the pudding, really. I think we may learn more about what happened at this meeting rather than summit later on when we see the outcome.
We will return to that visit. I know it's a big talking point, if it even happens in just a few moments. We're going to stick with Scotland for now. Rebecca, you were there with the King and Queen. Richard just mentioned Edinburgh Week. Set the scene. Why were they there?
So every year, the monarch, and Queen Elizabeth did it before King Charles, they go up and spend a week in Scotland to highlight the achievements of the people of Scotland, community cohesion, all the things they do in other parts of the country throughout the year. But this is a week they focus on Scotland, and they'll do investitures, a garden party, which I was covering. They have the Order of the Thistle, which is the Garter equivalent up in Scotland, an order of chivalry. Today, for example, the King is going to Jedburgh on the Scottish borders, where I'm told he's going to take part in a game of handbar. I really apologise.
A game of what?
Handbar. And I apologise to any Scottish viewers that I pronounced that wrong. But it's a kind of medieval football they play up there on the borders and in Orkney.
I'm sure we'll have a viewer who knows about it. It was described as chaotic, but in the best way.
Yes, yeah. One of the press officers said to me, Thursday's going to be chaotic, but in the best possible way. So it's all unfolding while we're filming, otherwise you would have been up there to see it. And it opens at Holyrood is one of the, I'm sure you've visited it as well, Richard, it's actually one of the most beautiful royal residences, I would say. It's grand, but it's intimate, and there's just it's surrounded by the most beautiful scenery. There's a real peaceful air around it. And they love staying up there. It's a beautiful place to go, and it opens with something called the Ceremony of the Keys. And I did a little video on it. It did very, very well on social media, because I think people are quite fascinated to see this thing as close up, where the provost presents the King with the keys and say, this is the keys to your city, and he goes, thank you very much, but you do a very good job, I shall hand them back to you. Little things like that are lovely kind of historic touches.
And it wasn't without controversy. We know Queen Camilla's proven passion for literacy, so given that Scotland is home to one of the world's best-selling children's book authors, why not see them? That might have been the thinking when it was arranged that Her Majesty would meet J.K. Rowling, author of the Harry Potter series. However, it wasn't a meeting, like I said, without controversy. Rebecca, this has put the cat among the pigeons.
Yeah, so interesting, we weren't advised about this meeting in advance, and I do wonder why. I was literally up there within, yards of it happening, but they do hold private audiences, and one of those audiences was between Queen Camilla and J.K. Rowling. Camilla, obviously one of the cornerstones of her public work is literacy, particularly encouraging children to read for fun, for pleasure, so they don't see it as a chore. And obviously, why wouldn't she want to meet the most famous children's author in the world? But obviously, and the palace, I have to say, were aware of this, and it was, I think, a calculated decision on their behalf, that she has become very involved in online debate over gender issues, particularly trans issues, that have become quite polarising.
This is J.K. Rowling,
rather than the Queen, yeah, exactly. And they knew that would raise some eyebrows, but their attitude is that she is a children's author who's passionate about the subject, and so is the Queen, and they wanted to go ahead with the meeting.
And there was another complaint that it was during Pride Month, which I think made it...
The last day of Pride Month, and some people were saying, that was a very deliberate slap in the face. I would disagree with that. I'm not sure that would have come into the palace's thinking.
Richard, Kate, obviously the Palace Press Office have to weigh up controversy, but there's probably perhaps also thinking that the monarch and his wife, they have to, in a sense, be above certain political frays. They do need to be able to meet people on all sides of the debate.
Of course, and I think they take the view, quite often, Rebecca will know this as well, that if someone wants to take offence at something, they will take offence. Mm. And I think it is very interesting that the meeting wasn't flagged in advance, but nevertheless, a photograph was issued, and they seemed to have a warm conversation. And I think the Queen will have approached this, as Rebecca was saying, as this is one of the most dominant, world-recognised authors, and who has made a massive contribution to children's literacy and children's literature as well. And why on earth shouldn't she meet her? They didn't have a discussion, I'm pretty sure, about trans issues. And, and if people don't like it, then tough.
I agree with that, because I think Camilla is someone who's had a fair share of brickbats over the years, and she knows to kind of hold her head up high and turn the other cheek. And I think her attitude will be, well, if people want to complain, will complain. And don't forget, she's a fan. I mean, I've interviewed her before, the Queen, when she was Duchess of Cornwall. And one of the things she made a point of saying to me, we were talking about literature, and she was saying her grandchildren love the Harry Potter books. And the then Prince of Wales, King Charles, would read them bedtime stories and do all the voices of the characters. And she was saying to me how much her grandchildren loved that. And her face really lit up when she was talking about that. So you can tell she's a fan of the books as well as the whole bigger issue about children and literacy.
But Richard, it's perhaps a reminder that she's Queen now, and that the scrutiny is, obviously she's faced scrutiny for a lot of her life, but in these sort of issues she faces greater scrutiny now that she's the wife of the monarch.
Personally I'm a great admirer of J.K. Rowling, but I don't think Queen Elizabeth would have met her in this way, or certainly not allowed a picture to be put out, because the wonderful thing about late Queen was that she never let people know what her opinions were. She was always very careful to avoid controversy. And that was of huge benefit to the monarchy, because people with really different views could feel, oh, actually, she's probably on my side. And so it was kind of ridiculous. You'd have people sort of on the left or the right of the political spectrum who would feel the Queen was on their side. And that really helped the monarchy. Whereas to be sort of meeting and making it very public was such a polarising figure, which J.K. Rowling has become, I think is bad for the monarchy.
I disagree, Richard, because I was going to say Queen Elizabeth met Ceausescu, people like that. She had to host them, and
And there's a significant difference. Queen Camilla is not the monarch, and Queen Elizabeth did meet people like this. And you're absolutely right. We all tried to find out what her view was on anything, and we ended up knowing nothing. But I don't think, by being seen with J.K. Rowling, Camilla is identifying herself as a supporter of the anti-trans lobby, or whatever view you want to take. She is a supporter of literacy and an authorship, and I think that's how the palace want that meeting, to be seen.
And also it's important to say that the other thing which J.K. Rowling has campaigned on is domestic violence, and she's talked about how she was a victim of that herself, and that's another of Queen Camilla's big subjects, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, look, she may have a view, but we still don't know what the view on the wider issues that people have against J.K. Rowling are.
Well, we're going to move on from that topic in a moment, because it is all happening up in Scotland. Lady Louise Windsor is graduating the day we record this from the University of St Andrews. Rebecca, what can we expect?
Well, we can expect a lovely family picture. The ceremony is taking place actually as we're recording this, but I've been promised by the palace we can get a lovely family picture afterwards of Lady Louise with her parents. Very interestingly, they've been quite open about this and have told us about it and said, look, we are very grateful to the media, which we get our share of brickbats too, for leaving her alone while she's in full-time education. She is planning, I'm told, to take a gap year, where she's going to do a bit of travel, a bit of study, a bit of work, while she decides where her future career takes her. And we would appreciate your understanding in leaving her to do that in peace as well. And, we'll keep you regularly updated on what things are happening. And there's going to be a lovely moment on Friday when she also goes to the Palace of Holyrood House and gets a Gold D.of.E. award from her father, which is going to be a lovely moment, and we'll be there to cover that. And they made a point of saying it's really important to her because this is the 70th anniversary of her grandfather, Prince Philip, setting them up. And I think it's the 40th anniversary of Edward's involvement with them. So there's a real nice kind of full circle moment then as well.
Very nice indeed. And would it be naughty, Richard Kay? We've heard about the media leaving Lady Louise alone. You were, of course, instructed to leave Prince William alone when he was up in St Andrews, but someone just broke that rule, didn't they? Who was that? Who could I possibly be talking about?
Well, now, there is a piquant irony in all this, because who was it who broke that embargo, which had only just come into place? None other than Prince Edward, now the Duke of Edinburgh. He had his camera crews following William around long after we in Fleet Street had observed the strictures to leave, and I'd left Scotland, and a huge hue and cry erupted. And I remember the then rector of St Andrews, a certain Andrew Neil, very famous newspaper columnist, including for the Mail, and now couldn't believe it, that of all the people they thought they'd have problems with, the paparazzi, no, the red tops, no, it was Prince Edward and his crew. So it is rather a delicious irony that Edward is there today seeing his daughter graduate.
Hopefully lessons have been learned, though.
It's an altogether calmer thing.
Yeah.
And now, of course, it's on streamed live on webcams and stuff, so it's a different era for
It's the mobile
graduating.
phone era, as we've discussed on the programme quite a lot. So it's the citizen journalism that they've got to worry about.
Now, speaking of citizens and what they think, let's turn to our poll question. And last week we asked readers of our newsletter, is King Charles right to offer Harry and Meghan accommodation at a royal residence next month? I said next month, it's this month now. More than 25,000 of you voted. 16% of you said yes, he should, as they're part of the family. 62% meanwhile said no, as they're no longer working royals, while 22% said no and that Harry should apologise before he gets somewhere to stay. Now, to take part in these polls, all you need to do is to sign up to our free weekly email newsletter. To do that, you just need to open the camera on your phone and point it at this QR code on screen. It's the black and white box. A link will pop up for you when you do that, and you can click that link and put your email address in. If, of course, you're watching on your phone, you can just click the link we'll put in the description below. We do, as I promised earlier, have a lot more on Harry and Meghan's visit coming up after your comments, however. Now, last week I asked you for your favourite posh words. Now, we can't cover them all, but there are more than a few, I should say. Luncheon was one for lunch. That's Brenda Manchester and JP's mum. Unedifying from Amy Le Normand.
That's Richard Eden's favourite word.
Unedifying.
I do love that word. Yeah,
unedifying.
I've noticed.
There was one that came up which a lot of people said was indubitably. But I don't think we say that terribly often. I think we say undeniably or undoubtedly.
That's because we can't pronounce it properly. Indubitably.
Indubitably.
Oh, Tony.
You said there's a little B in there. I'd say caviar was one. Anna Sandland says the privy purse. I think she's probably right.
That's just not posh, it's weird.
Splendid, brilliant. Oh, rather. That's quite fun, isn't it? That's Leslie Phillips.
Isn't it? How you say it.
Hello. Joe Laurie says jolly good and beastly.
Beastly's a good one.
Beastly,
yeah.
tight for drunk. Lavatory as well came up. Mary Smith says posh is a posh word. And finally, Mary Harrison says the best posh word, said just right, is quite. Quite. To a couple of questions now that came in on email from Emily Coyle. She writes, hello from Seattle. I love your show. I first found it as a podcast and then was absolutely delighted to learn I could actually watch it all on YouTube. Huzzah! Huzzah indeed. That's not a posh word, isn't it? That's a good word, yeah. Anyway, she asks, what is a set piece? From time to time, someone will refer to this or that as a set piece. Rebecca, I've heard you refer to things as set pieces. What do you mean by it?
Yeah, it's one of my favourite words. And it just basically describes what I always call the hardy annuals in the royal calendar. Things that involve things that they've been doing for years, decades and centuries. So we'll be talking about the Order of the Garter, Trooping of the Colour, the people there, the way they're organised. They're what I call the set piece events. And we love them.
We absolutely do. And Emily also asks, when you say, for example, that the Duke of Abercorn is representing the King at Lady Pamela's memorial service, what exactly does that entail? Is the Duke treated the same way that the King would have been treated if he was there? Does the Duke have a special message of some sort? What does it entail? Richard Kay.
Well, they are very much what the word it says. They are the representative, and they will go and sit. If it's a memorial service, for example, or a funeral, they often will sit at the front pew in the church, and they will probably have a message from the monarch or the Royal Highness they happen to be representing. The royals can't go to everything. There are far too many memorial services for old staff, old friends, and people they have to represent, where they have to be represented at. And so they send someone along who does the job for them. And you'll see it in the columns of the newspapers most days. So-and-so was representing the King or the Prince of Wales at such and such an event. But they are not treated as a monarch or an HRH. But they are very much well received. And I think the people who hold these events are very grateful that they've got a royal representation.
It's a signal of favour, isn't it? That we would love to be there, we can't.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Well, there you go, Emily. I hope those answered both your questions. However, now it's time to what is already becoming a favourite part of the show. That's right, it's Sock Watch. I think it's the wink that really gets me there. Now, Richard, what are you wearing and who sent them in this week?
These were sent in very generously by Janet Purdy, who lives in Chance Harbour. I looked it up, looks like a beautiful place.
Lovely, doesn't it? I looked it up too.
Yeah, in Nova Scotia, Canada. And she sent me these wonderful socks with the maple leaf of Canada. And appropriately, yesterday, day before we recorded this, was Canada Day. So I'm wearing them with Commonwealth pride. And she said that she recently visited London and had a great time. So it's good to hear from her.
Thank you very much again from Janet Purdy in Chance Harbour, Nova Scotia in Canada. Let us know in the comments if you want to send Dear Richard some socks and we'll let you know how. Or you can email us, palace@mailplus.co.uk. We'll put that address on screen for you now too. We're going to wrap the comments section of this show with this rather cheeky one from BJQ, who writes, Prince William should come to the US at the same time Harry is in the UK. There's an option. Anyway, that leads us, I think, rather nicely to the next bit of our discussion, the will they, won't they saga of Harry's trip to the UK with his children and Meghan Markle, and what has been called the new Megxit deal. This week, our colleague Alison Boshoff caused quite a stir when she revealed details about the deal that is claimed the Sussexes were offering to the palace. Let's hear from her now.
I'm Alison Boshoff, the editor-at-large of the Daily Mail, and I wrote a story recently with the headline Harry's New Megxit Deal, where I detailed the terms and strategy of Harry and Meghan's forthcoming visit to the UK and their potential reunion with King Charles and his grandchildren Archie and Lilibet. So I was asked to look into the visit because we knew it was coming up from July the 6th, to find out how long it was, what would they be doing, where would they stay, and so forth. The trip is real and it has been planned for a really long time. They've been thinking about it, talking about it with the palace since January. I'm absolutely sure of that. And it's a complex set of arrangements that needs to be made, and there is support from the palace, which can only be coming from the king, to the idea of them coming for a visit and getting the support that they need to make this visit happen. So what has been agreed to? Well, it's not totally agreed to. This is what I think the source is Harry adjacent, and this is what Harry wants to happen, and this is what Harry believes that there is some agreement to, not that everyone agrees to. Okay, so it's not a full-on agreement, but what Harry believes is that he and Meghan are going to be allowed to continue to pursue commercial opportunities in America and elsewhere in the world. But then when they're in the UK, as long as they don't try and flog their jam here, then it will all be considered all right. There will be a line drawn, and that what they get up to in the UK, as long as that is charity focused and respectful and always, fulfilling, treading along the path of behaviour that would be recognisable in the royal family, so, nothing outrageous, that then they can actually be valued and present themselves as working royals. You remember Harry did say in Ukraine he considers himself a working royal still. I know we all thought that question was put to bed in 2022 after the Sandringham Agreement. Harry doesn't think that's right. He thinks he is still a working royal, and this will allow him to continue to think that. Another really important part of the agreement is that there will be no social media activity, no photos, no videos, no posts kind of hinting, we've just had tea with the king. They have to behave themselves, and I'm told that Harry agreed to that in a heartbeat. That's the price, he'll pay it, that's fine. There is a big question here about forgiveness, isn't there? Or is it about what's sensible behaviour? I mean, if a dog has bitten you, you don't want to put your fingers back in its mouth, right? So with Harry and Meghan, I don't think any of us can forget Spare, the Oprah interview, the Netflix series, all of those barbs saying the royals were racist, saying they were uncaring, saying that they had married people who weren't really right for them, but right for the institution. I mean, these are really wounding, deliberately wounding things which have been said and have been said for money. But then Harry's under the impression that he's the wronged one, and you might remember in those interviews with Tom Bradby around the release of Spare, he was talked about the possibility of reconciliation with his family, and he said, well, there can be no reconciliation without truth. So what he has wanted, what he's waiting for, is an apology. And of course, there are other people who really feel that they are due multiple apologies from the Sussexes, and this is a kind of classic in a family dynamic, isn't it, where you have both sides in armed camps and everyone is waiting for the other person to say sorry first, and somebody in the end, and this makes me think inevitably about the Beckhams as well. But somebody in the end has to be the bigger person and make the first move, which I believe is what's happening here.
Alison Boshoff, their editor-at-large at the Daily Mail. Rebecca, this is all getting rather confusing, isn't it? What's the latest line from the palace? Is this still, as some people in the comments are saying, this trip's just not happening, it's all the PR stunt. What can you tell us?
Well, confusing, stroke, boring, irritating, depending on what camp you're in, I think. Look, the palace genuinely have not been speaking about this and not guiding about this, because their attitude is, if it happens, it's a private meeting and should remain private. But you can imagine the sense of frustration of those around them that the Sussexes are leaking and spinning it every step of the way, which is exactly what they didn't want to happen. But I spoke to somebody earlier on this week that has got knowledge of the situation and said that as far as they were concerned, the palace still had no idea. They gave them an offer, as they do. Every time Harry comes to the UK, we can put you up if you want to. Harry has made great play by saying, I'm accepting, and then maybe changing his mind and then accepting again. They still know nothing, Those sheets are still in the cupboard waiting to be, rolled out on the bed. They don't know.
I just can't believe this, though. If someone was coming to your house and they said, oh, yeah, I might come next week, I might not, you'd be like, well, can you tell me? Because I need to know whether to, prepare food or
Well, they need to start decanting those pretzels and putting them in another bag and putting them beside the bed, don't
Yeah, because
they?
we know the standards that Meghan expects from her lifestyle programme.
Yeah,
and indeed, if
exactly.
security is of paramount, that needs to be factored in as well, where it is and what the protocols are for
they
wherever
haven't said
they might be staying.
what residents they've offered them, but it's been made very clear to me that Buckingham Palace is an option and that nobody can really quite understand what is so unsafe about a palace, which is one of the most guarded properties in London and has men with machine guns standing outside. I mean, everyone is baffled by this, but irritated.
It's good enough for heads of state at times. It's
Exactly. I mean, there's the Belgian suite. I'm not sure if the Belgian suite actually is in operation quite yet because of the refurbishment. But that's had crowned heads of state from all around the world. Presidents, prime ministers, you name it. So.
Is there a California suite?
No, there's not.
There's a California stores. That's at Windsor Castle.
Yeah.
Now, Richard Kay, there's a suggestion that Harry and Meghan, this was in Alison's report, they want to be free to flog their jam and make speeches for cash in America, but they want to be treated as working royals when they're here. We'd always understood that when the late Queen did the Sandringham Summit Agreement, there was to be no half in, half out. This kind of still does sound a little half in, half out, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, of course, when that summit happened, it was pre-jams and pre-everything else, and we didn't know how Harry and Meghan were proposing to make money, except we knew deals had been signed with Netflix and other streamers at that time. It reminds me very much of how the Duchess of York set about one of her many reinventions back in the day when, after her separation and divorce from Prince Andrew, she pretty much based herself in the United States and made an awful lot of money for several years. And she took the attitude, as did the Queen, the late Queen here, that it's sort of out of sight, out of mind. If it was happening in America, she could do it as long as she didn't bring the same sort of commercial instincts to the United Kingdom. And by and large, she sort of stuck by that for a few years. But, is this the same sort of setup? I don't really know. I mean, at the moment, Meghan, for example, has shown no interest in developing any business streams, finance streams in the United Kingdom. So maybe that's how they're hoping to proceed.
Richard Eden, these so-called sort of stipulations, no cameras, no Instagram posts, no revelations in interviews afterwards, are they enforceable and are they enough to warrant a welcome?
I mean, I should say, I'm not sure they're sort of stipulations from the palace, rather they're sort of what Harry and Meghan's side are sort of offering to do. That's very good of them. But, I mean, that does get to the heart of it, because the key thing is trust. And if they are to mend fences with the royal family, that means showing that they won't be using information. I mean, all that's happened in the past with the breaking of confidences, with the interviews, the Netflix programmes, the Oprah interviews, it destroyed that trust. So if they do want to genuinely improve relations with the royal family, they need to show that they can have a trip like this and not talk about it, and as soon as they're back in the States, we don't see People magazine giving details of what was discussed. So it will be very interesting to watch, and I think that's the sort of thing that the royal family will be really nervous about, frankly.
And maybe having a clearer media strategy, Rebecca, because just 24 hours after the Duke and Duchess of Sussex confirmed details of their visit, 5 days of engagement, Harry was reported to be reconsidering his plans to bring his wife and children. What on earth happened in that short space of time?
This is why people are tearing their hair out. So I wrote a big piece in the Mail on Monday to try and make sense of the weekend's events, because every time you clicked on your phone, there was a different briefing being put out. So on Friday evening, the Sussex team here in the UK put out to chosen media, not me, I hasten to add, a full op note giving day by day, time by time briefings, as we get in the course of our job from everyone on a confidential basis, so you can plan your coverage about where they're going to be, what they're going to be doing. And my understanding in that note, they made very clear that they know Ravek hadn't made a decision on giving them extra security. But
now, Ravek's the Home Office Committee, which decides on security issues.
Exactly, yes, exactly. It does have some royal representatives on it, but is also made of, police and much, wider officials. That they made clear, although that decision Harry's put an appeal to get more security, they haven't made a decision on it, but they were still going ahead with it regardless. Yet within 24 hours, suddenly another flurry of statements come out from the Sussexes saying Harry is devastated. Ravek made clear that they've got no intention of ruling on this. They've clipped the decision into the long grass. He's in tears. He's distraught. He's now reconsidering the trip completely. By the next day, by Sunday, there's another set of events being put out that actually he's going to go ahead and he's going to look at ways to try and bring his wife and children over safely. I mean, it is changing day by day, and this adds the frustration within the royal circles here. They were like, this would be so easy to do. Come, go quietly, bring your children, go back quietly. The palace was perfectly prepared to have a peaceable, quiet, low-key visit, and you have turned that into anything but.
Yes, it's not quiet, is it, Richard? It does feel at every stage that the sort of histrionics of the technique to try and force a change here when it comes to either the palace or the government.
It does very much feel like that. There's a form of emotional blackmail going on. I mean, they know that the king wants to see his grandchildren. He's barely seen them. And I think the Sussexes, want that sort of reconciliation with Harry's father in the hope that it might lead to a broader reconciliation across other members of the royal family. But this kind of behaviour is doing its damnedest to make sure that doesn't happen. And, I mean, the latest I heard was that, in fact, they will come, but we may not see the children. And I think that would be a great shame, because I think the public would like to see a picture, certainly, of the king with his grandchildren. But yeah, it's a real mess.
And Rebecca, then we got another twist, as a security report was leaked today, which suggests that Harry faces elevated threats from terror plots in the UK. Where could this document have leaked from, and what more can you tell us?
Where could it have leaked from, Luke? I mean, two organisations that have been quite positive in their coverage of Harry's situation have miraculously found themselves in the possession of a security report commissioned by Harry and his security team privately in the US, but claiming there are a dozen very serious terrorist plots against him that they're aware of in this country. I think 5 or 6 of which they say specifically originate in Britain. And they're talking about how his fears for his safety are rooted in the reality of the situation. The understanding is that document was given to Ravek in February, and Harry really hoped that it would persuade them to reinstate him with full-time security when he returns to the UK, but it seems it has not been successful. And again, the fact that this been leaked days before he's due to arrive adds to the sense that this whole situation has been designed to manipulate the situation. I'm not saying it has, I don't know. But the sense is, why is he doing this now? He has known about this situation for a year. He was coming over here. He's known his security situation hadn't changed. So why was he going ahead and planning, and why is he now creating a drama about it at the last minute? And it's leading people to seriously question his motives.
This is a private security report paid for by Harry. Yeah. Presumably Ravek, the Home Office committee here, which analyses these security threats, have their own intelligence from the likes of MI5 and other security agencies, you thought. And so it's not like they're not aware of threats and not balancing, yes.
Of course they do, and it would be very, very interesting to know what the provenance of this report is and what access to, obviously, this kind of information private security contractors were able to find out. I mean, they weren't. It's not the CIA or the FBI, as far as we know. It's a private firm, and Ravek will have examined it, and maybe they've done some double checking of their own, and we simply don't know. They'll never talk about security threats. But the wider point is, of course, that there are threats against the royal family on any given day, and judgments are made about how serious these threats are and how to take them. I mean, you know, if we took every single threat seriously, we'd never see members of the royal family out and about. So judgment has to apply, and we don't know what judgment has been used in this case.
It's worth, sorry to interrupt, Luke, but it is worth noting that, again, this is one of the things that has really got Buckingham Palace's goat, is this constant suggestion by Harry that either his father or the people that work for him that are represented on Ravek could interfere in the process. And it has been stressed to me so many times that that is simply unconstitutional. The King wouldn't want to, and nor should he, and that we should have, and Harry, should have faith that the professionals on that committee are making the best decision. The fact is, Harry chose to leave royal duties and chose to leave the UK and live in North America, and as a result he was not entitled to round-the-clock security, and that is a decision he made. I don't think anyone would willingly place him or his family into the path of danger. No one wants that, no one on Ravek, and least not the King. But what people are saying to me is we must trust that Ravek are making a proportional and reasonable decision based on their expertise.
Richard, no one just returns the notion of stuff leaks coming out, you could say, or briefings coming out from the Sussexes, because you have written your column for Mail Plus today about that. You quote, you discuss a certain Sussex WhatsApp group of journalists that you quote are profoundly relieved not to be a member of. Tell us why.
Yes, it's a WhatsApp group set up by Harry and Meghan's spin doctor, or sorry, I should say communications director or something, Liam Maguire, and it's to give information to favoured journalists, and they all tend to sort of report this information at the same time. And that's fine. I mean, you know, the royal family does it too. It's important that journalists get accurate information. But what happened last Friday was a disaster, mentioned by Rebecca, was they sent out a full operational note. Now, when you get one of those from the palace, that's gospel. You know that this will happen when they say it will. But then for the next day to be told, oh, actually, that was all rubbish, we've changed our mind, it's so embarrassing, because in the meantime, everyone had reported it, and it makes us all look like, you know, prize chumps. So all I was saying is I'm very grateful not to be a member of this group, and it shows the hazards, unfortunately, of taking Harry and Meghan at their word.
Neither of you are members of this group, are you?
Nope.
There we go. And is this part, do you think, of what you've described as Project Thor, groups like this?
No,
because it's a relatively new thing. They weren't, for a long time, they were officially at least not engaging, not briefing. That was a big part of how they were going to do things. This is a relatively new part,
yeah,
isn't it?
I mean, Project Thor was Harry and Meghan trying to change attitudes towards them with the help of favourable figures in in the royal household and also in politics. I mean, the journalists, look, we'll never turn down stories, and if someone sends us a message, that's great. But the dangers are that when you've got, you're being fed information which changes from day to day, it can, instead of making us look like, newspapers of record or whatever, it can make us look very ill-informed. So yes, they are embarrassing us.
I think the point is, isn't it, that it's eroded trust. And, there's a strong element of trust in this business. It's our job to double source, things as and when we can. And that's very important. But, you have to trust the information you're being given in the first place. is correct, and there have been question marks over that.
A good example would be the BBC, which is, the ultimate in reliability in Britain when they report something. So they reported Harry and Meghan will come, they'll be bringing their children, and then the next day they had to have another report saying that actually that was wrong. And you don't want that from the BBC, and that's not their fault. They're, brilliant reporters, but they're going to be losing trust in what they're being told by Harry and Meghan.
Well, it's a fascinating piece that Richard has written. We'll put a link to that in the description below, along with the articles written by the rest of the panel. Always check down there, because we put links to the brilliant writing that our experts put out each week. You can also find links to those in our Palace Confidential newsletter. Richard, Kate, how have the Palace come out of it? Have they been at all damaged, do you think, by this? They've been stung again, or do you think they've come out okay?
Well, on a strictly superficial view of it, they look slightly flat-footed, but actually they're not. They have very straightforwardly not engaged, and I think by not engaging, they've been able to sit back a bit and look at all this unravel, and the whole saga spooling out of control, and it has nothing to do with them. And so I think for once they'll be very glad that they've adopted this strategy that Rebecca was talking about not briefing whenever it comes to Harry and Meghan, unless there's something specific which they are the lead parties in, and they're not here. They're the supplicants, if you like. So I don't think the Palace come out of this badly. People will spin it, of course, the way they want to see it.
Rebecca, just to an article written by Tina Brown, who wrote that Harry desperately misses his brother, but the feeling, I don't think we can say is reciprocated, can we?
I mean, I've no idea what Harry thinks. Maybe he does, but I think he's gone the wrong way about trying to promote reconciliation. Families are a complex, situation. I remember the famous line, someone in my family said, you can choose your friends, but you can't choose your relatives. And this is a classic case of them. But I'm very much in sympathy with William over this. I think if a family member had said the things about me and attacked me in the way that Harry did, in the most vicious, nasty, sly way, I probably wouldn't want to speak to them again. And I've heard nothing. Look, you can never predict anything in this job. And, William is a good man, and maybe one day he'll reach out a hand of friendship, I don't know. A wary hand of friendship, I'd say. But I've certainly heard nothing that would make me think that he's massively up for any kind of reconciliation.
Richard Kay, I mean, we're quoting Tina Brown again on this, and she is a well-connected journalist. She was friends with the late Diana. She went on to say that Harry misses William as he's the only other person who knew what it was to be Diana's son. Could their shared love for their mother be the thing that sort of finally reunites them? Is that too optimistic thinking?
Well, once upon a time that was true, but in fact what has happened in the last 4 years is that their mother and the legacy and the memory of their mother has actually driven them apart, and that's in part because of the way that Harry has tried to claim Diana for himself. He was Diana's son, he is the one who is carrying on her mission. And William is quite right and I know he has complained about this, saying, well, she was my mother too. And there has been, using that word of Richard's, some rather unedifying squabbling over the last few years about who truly represents the core of Diana, Harry or William. And in fact, Tina Brown is quite right that they do have this extraordinary connection because of losing their mother, but it's a connection which actually is forcing them further apart.
Recollections varying again over...
Well, I've heard William has apparently used the word crass about some of the, the kind of the claims of ownership, that I'm the true inheritor of her unfettered spirit, and I think he just finds that very, very crass.
We could talk for at length this. We do have to move on. The Royals released their annual finance reports this week. We weren't able to talk about the details in full on last week's episode as the information was embargoed, and indeed Rebecca had her head in the books going through it all as we recorded, which is why she couldn't be here. Here's Robert Hardman with an in-depth look.
Well, let's start with the real headline grabber, that Buckingham Palace is no longer going to be the residence of the monarch. Yes, it's going to carry on being Monarchy HQ, they're not selling it, but it's not going to be a home. The essentials are that after a £369 million 10-year renovation programme paid for out of public funds by the British taxpayer effectively to provide a newly refurbished official residence for the monarch, the king has said he's not going to use it as his principal residence. This breaks a tradition that goes all the way back to 1837 when Queen Victoria made Buckingham Palace Royal HQ. The palace had actually been in royal hands for many years before that. It was George III who bought what was then called Buckingham House for Queen Charlotte, really as a private place to bring up their children. The monarchy remained at St James's Palace. That continued through the Georgian era. It was Victoria who said, no, it's going to be where we live, it's going to be the home of the monarchy. So that's what's changing. It's going to carry on being HQ, but it's not going to be a home. Now, all this comes as the royals release their finances. This news about royal accommodation has rather eclipsed a lot of this talk about finances. Normally at this time of year, we're all talking about how much money the monarchy get and do they deserve it. Well, that debate carries on as usual. The big headline is this time around, we've had a major uplift to the sovereign grant. Now, the sovereign grant is the government payment to the monarchy for doing its job as head of state. It's not there to cover racehorses and frocks and minor members of the royal family. It's what it costs to run a head of state in the same way that it costs to run the president of Germany, France or the USA. It covers staff, it covers royal engagements, it covers travel, it covers official household expenses, it covers things like receptions, and it also, crucially, it covers the maintenance of Buckingham Palace and other palaces, because there are other official residences that have to be looked after as well. Now, that's 3 years ago, it was about £50 million. It's going up to £100 million. And a lot of people have said, well, that's a hell of a price hike in this day and age, despite inflation. It's not just a year-on-year increase. What the extra money is going to be spent on is things like cybersecurity, for example. That's a major new threat to any head of state operation. There's also a huge backlog of maintenance that's been waiting for years on other residences, such as the Palace of Holyrood House and Windsor Castle and places like that. Those have to be done. There's talk of new boilers, for example, at Windsor to hit new net zero targets. Obviously, the monarchy is expected to be in the vanguard of all the new net zero technology that is about to be foisted on the nation. So all that stuff costs, and that is why the sovereign grant, which is a chunk of the surplus that comes every year from the Crown estate, I won't go into all the details, but it's public money effectively. That's why it's going up to around £100 million. And the other big headline grabber in the news is that we finally have a figure for the King's tax bill. Now, that has never been released before. The late Queen didn't release her tax bill. Prince Charles did when he was Prince of Wales. The King used to tell us how much tax he paid, but monarchs haven't done this until now. He thought, well, let's move with the times. We'll say. So there is a figure. It's come out this year for the first time. £12.9 million. That is the King's tax bill. Now, people immediately said, well, that's pretty meaningless unless we know what expenses were deducted before we came to that figure. How did we arrive at that figure? Well, everybody's tax returns are, to a degree, private. So we have a sum. What does it mean? Well, it means that the King is just in the top 100 taxpayers in this country. The Prince of Wales, he's released his tax affairs as well. He's paying around 8 million. He's not even in the top 100. But we have a figure. They have put these figures in the public domain. So those are the three big issues that have come out in the last few days. One is the monarchy is no longer going to treat Buckingham Palace as a home, but merely as an office. Number two, the sovereign grant, it's going up, but it's going up with a reason, not just because of inflation. It's going up above inflation, but with good cause. And number three, the King has finally given us a figure of his tax bill.
Robert Hardman there. Rebecca, as I said, you were going through them all yesterday. Last week, I should say. And one of the main figures that you pulled out was the core funding of the monarchy is going to jump to £100 million a year. That's almost double where it was in the space of just 3 years. This does come at a time when government spending is being squeezed. There are fewer working royals than ever before. Public opinion will mean that they do need to justify this. How are they justifying it?
Well, a big chunk of this money is the final remaining amount that's going towards the refurbishment of Buckingham Palace. We've discussed it a lot on the show, £369 million in all, rebuilding of the palace, which honestly was hadn't had any work done to it since before the Second World War, and parts were crumbling around the late Queen's ears. Doesn't mean we shouldn't scrutinise it, though, and it's absolutely right to say that that is a huge jump. I remember when I first started writing about these big royal finance reports, the monarchy was getting 20, 30, 40, maximum of 50 million a year. Now we are seeing that to 100 million. Now it will fall flat because this, as I say, this is the last chunk of money going towards that final push of refurbishment, which will end next year. It will remain flat for the next 5 years, which actually in real terms will mean that it'll actually start to decrease. But it's a significant chunk of money that people have a right to say, how is this being spent? And that's what myself and other journalists do every year, is go through those books with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that British taxpayers are getting value for money.
So, Richard Kerr, as we just heard, the past few years, the cost and scale of the Buckingham Palace renovations have been justified because we all thought the King was eventually going to move in. It was going to be the chief royal residence, royal HQ. Now that's not the case. Are the palace opening themselves up for a bit of criticism, having briefed that for so long?
I think they have, and I think people will also be disappointed that it's no longer going to be an occupied royal palace in the sense of having someone sleep over, the monarch sleep over. It's one of the great attractions of our royal buildings, is that we know that royals live and breathe there. And now it's going to essentially become an office. And I think it is an error on their part for saying all along that it was the King's intention, once the renovations were complete, that he and his wife would occupy their private suite and live there. And live there, as Winston Churchill, our great Prime Minister, always famously said about living over the shop. It was essential to the integrity of the monarchy that the monarch lived at Buckingham Palace, HQ of the British monarchy. Now that's no longer going to happen. I have to say, I'm not surprised. And at the time when he became king, you know, Rebecca and I were writing a lot about this, and I think I wrote one piece. I said, I don't think he'll ever live there. He much prefers the coziness of Clarence House and using Buckingham Palace as an office. But now, you know, as Rebecca has written in the past, William has indicated that he'll never live there either. So it is a major break with the past, and I think it's a disappointing one.
I do agree with Richard that it is a shame in some ways that a monarch will not be there. Actually, I don't think we're going to see a lot of difference day to day, because the last time Queen Elizabeth slept in Buckingham Palace was in March 2020, at the start of the pandemic, and even then she was only there 1 or 2 days a week. She much preferred Windsor, and of course their argument is we're going to open it up much more to the public, so the public will be getting more access. This will still be Monarchy HQ. But I know what you mean. There's always that frisson with Buckingham Palace that you could theoretically walk around the corner and there's a monarch wandering down to the kitchen to get a late night cup of cocoa or something like that, you know. So I can see it from both sides. And having been in there, it's still a living, you know, without a monarch in, it's still a living, breathing, vibrant building that's fascinating to be able to go, whether you're going as a guest or as a journalist or as a visitor.
Richard Eden, do you think people will still want to, long term, go and visit a palace? Will it still have the appeal it did before?
I have to say, I mean, some of the biggest tourist attractions in Britain, the stately homes, are because the families still live there. You know, whether it's Chatsworth in Derbyshire or Arundel Castle in Suffolk. What's part of the attraction is they are
Sussex.
in Sussex, yeah. They are living, breathing homes that the families still live in, and I think that's a big part of the attraction. So I do think it's diminishes it as a tourist attraction. But look, I mean, people still go to Versailles, don't they? And France hasn't had a royal family for quite a while, so I think there'll still be plenty of visitors wanting to see Buckingham Palace, but it's a shame in some ways.
I think what the reason why we were quizzing the Palace quite hard last week about this is that I was there in that briefing 9 years ago when they looked us in the eye and said Queen Elizabeth will absolutely be moving back in. And I think I asked the question, went, well, based on my record, it should be 104. Are you like, sure she's going to be? No, it is absolutely. And then that kind of change, they start using the word intention. And you're like, right, okay, this is shifting. And the last few years, every time we've asked them about it, oh no, it's definitely the King's intention to come back. And you could just see the mood change. So I suppose it doesn't surprise me at all that is a thing. And obviously Queen Elizabeth famously didn't want to live there. She really didn't like it. She found it quite kind of cold and empty. But I do remember once being in the Palace Gardens doing a piece about her, and it was just me and a photographer and a press officer, and I saw the net curtains twitching in her apartments and her head peeking out and looking out to see what we were doing. And it was a really special moment. I'm quite sad you won't actually have the chance of seeing that again.
Oh, that's lovely. Now, Richard K. Eagle-eyed journalists also spotted an interesting change of wording in this financial report. Under the official duties of the sovereign, King Charles is said to protect the space for faith within the multi-faith nation. Now, previous reports described the King as head of the Church of England and defender of the faith. Why the change?
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, it harks back to his time as Prince of Wales, when Charles talked about the day he became king, he might not accept that title of Defender of the Faith, but Defender of Faiths. Now, this is a man who has spent many years involved in inter-community dialogue. He's reached out to all the major religions of the world, and he's recognised that Britain is a multicultural country these days. We are not the same country that we were when his mother came to the throne in 1952. And there are people from all sorts of backgrounds now, and it's all part of his inclusion agenda, if you like. Now, I think it's a good thing, but I know some people won't, and a lot of people will see this as some sort of, the conspiracy theorists out there will see this as another nod to Islam, Charles's obsession with all things Muslim, but I don't think it should be seen as like that. It is a rather awkward form of words. I mean, the Queen was much happier with her job description as head of nation, and head of the armed forces. Yes, she was the supreme governor of the Church of England as well, but Charles has sort of added all these additional words. It's all a bit wordy.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one. I'm sure there'll be comments on that below. But for now, do you hear that? That's the sound that plays for our unsung royal hero of the week inside Around the Royal Family. Rebecca, at the top of the show we mentioned that Catherine completed the 3 Peaks Challenge, but she met this week's nominee along the way, didn't she? Who am I talking about?
Oh, this has really put a smile on my face. So when Catherine was doing her 3 Peaks Challenge, she bumped into a young boy, a teenager called Ted Haslam, who sadly has been paraplegic since the age of 3 after suffering a spinal tumour. And his family were doing, and friends were doing, the same fundraising effort that the princess was doing, but to raise money for a charity that provided toys for children like him when they were in hospital to play with. And they encountered the princess twice on their route up and down the different mountains as they were all kind of racing to get there within this 24-hour limit. And Catherine was superb with him, and there's video of her looking him in the eye and just saying, "Oh, Ted, you see this poor child being lifted up in his wheelchair by all the team, loving every minute, loving being involved." And she really got down with him and talked to him on a motherly level, I would say, about how are you okay? Are you too cold? I mean, look at all these people in t-shirts. Are they crazy? What are they doing? And as a result of her meeting him, she decided to make a personal donation, which I believe to run into the thousands, to his own fundraising event. And she put a personal message on there saying it was one of the highlights of her trip, doing this to meet him. And as a result, Ted's team, who were only hoping to raise £5,000, already exceeded £20,000. So it just shows you the power of monarchy, and I think the power of her in particular, to resonate with people and to not make it about her, to make it about the charity she's working for and these other people that are taking part.
What an incredible achievement, Ted Haslam. Very inspirational, going up all those peaks. It's Snowdon, Scuffles Pike and Ben Nevis, which are of course the highest peaks in Wales, England and Scotland. He's certainly exceeded his fundraising target, I think going for even more now. We will leave a link to his Just Giving page in the description below. Now, Catherine certainly takes after her late mother-in-law when it comes to her charitable nature. Richard Kate, it would have been the late Princess Diana's 65th birthday this week, wouldn't it? How did she like to celebrate birthdays?
She wasn't a great fan of birthdays for this very good reason. She got inundated with flowers and gifts, and it meant spending hours, if not days, writing thank you notes. And the one thing that Diana was extremely good at was her very prompt thank you letters. And many people who received things over the years from her were always noted. They were rushed out almost immediately. But I remember her once telling me that Kensington Palace on July the 1st was like Kew Gardens. So many flowers were coming in. And one person, of course, who famously liked to send her flowers was President Trump. Unfortunately, Donald Trump got the date wrong. So every year these flowers arrived on the wrong day, not on her birthday. She didn't keep them, by the way. They were all donated to the Marsden and to other hospitals. But yeah, birthdays were not her favourite day of the year.
Well, that's a lovely memory and a very nice link, of course, in the Marsden there to Catherine. And although, of course, Diana's not around to mark it, we have compiled one of our world-famous montages to mark the late Princess Diana's 65th birthday. A birthday montage there on what would have been the late Princess Diana's 65th birthday. A reminder that if you want to see the full episode of Alison Boshoff's Palace Reacts on the Harry and Meghan Will They Won't They UK visit, you can click here for that. Just time to say thank you to Rebecca, the Richards, Eden and Kay, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Goodbye.